now looking back, I was probably a bit deluded, but I thought I could start this new company. And I had this idea, and I was trying, I had a little bit of an entrepreneurial bug, and I tried to decide, what was I going to start this company in, because I think the entrepreneurship light went on before sometimes the content light. And I had previously been a trainer. I had been doing some leadership development work and some teaching at McMaster University in the business school. And I had done a few other things that I had dabbled into that sort of led me to the firm that I created. And so I left my role at J&J, started this company, and I was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I remember the day that with my last day at J&J, I used to drive a company car, so I had to get my sister to pick me up from work. I was holding my box, and then as we were driving home, my sister drove me downtown, and my friends had thrown me this party that was like, it was actually at Key, if any of you have ever been to Key downtown. And it was actually at Key, and it was this, great Lisa's Becoming an Entrepreneur party. And I remember thinking at that party that I'm going to do so well, and next year I'm going to throw the same party, but I'm going to throw it for them. And it's going to be my thank you for being here and supporting me through this. And I don't think I had any idea at the time what the next year of my life would look like. So I fast forward in time, I've got my website and my brochures and my business cards and everything else that you think that you need. And it was 4 months in, and my only clients are 2 of my friends. And they sympathetically gave me some work. And I was really struggling, to be honest. And I had met all sorts of different people, and different people had given me advice, and I had mentors coming out the wazoo. And I had met another entrepreneur who did not similar work, but was selling into sort of similar areas, into the HR stream, into corporations. And so one day we found ourselves back at Key. It was a Friday afternoon in the spring, and we were on the patio. And he was saying, this is why we became entrepreneurs, so that we could decide on 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday that we can go out for drinks. And as he's saying this, I started crying. And he said, "What's wrong?" And he was kind of not the like emotional, hold your hand kind of person, more like a tough love person. So he was like, "Pull yourself together, what's your problem?" And I said, "I have no work, I have no car, I eat tuna sandwiches every day." And I just said, "What have I done?" I said, I went from, having this succession path at J&J, this career that they had kind of mapped out for me. I was actually engaged at the time, so I'm sure my now husband, then fiance, thought, "What have I done? I'm marrying this disaster." And I didn't know what was going on. And so this person who became a very good friend of mine, said to me, "I have one real question for you." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So for 5 years you worked at J&J?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "And previous to that you worked at another biotech company?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So how is someone who's never met you before, never heard your name, maybe has heard your name maybe once if you happen to do a little bit of networking, how are they supposed to find you and hire you? How are they going to Google the Matam group?" Because, by the way, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. And then he said, "Are they going to Google leadership or diversity?" Because that's the kind of work that we do. He said, "Because, by the way, they're going to come up with 100 results. So explain to me how someone who's never heard of you before is going to hire you." And I was crying so hard that I luckily didn't have to answer the question. But it really led me to a very concrete path, which was, he said to me that day, "You've got to become a professional networker. If there's nothing else that you do over the next couple of months, you're going to network and network and network, and that's going to become your job." And he actually held me accountable to that. He told me that every day I had to meet with a minimum of 2 people. And at the time, he said it was any 2 people. It didn't matter if it was my grade 2 teacher. It didn't matter if it was my dad's dentist. It just mattered that I found 2 people every day who would meet with me. And what I would do is I would tell them my story, and at the end of my story I would say, "Do you know anyone who you think I should meet who could benefit from my services?" And that essentially is how I got started. And so what you're probably saying is, "Wow, she didn't know that. It took her 4 months to figure that out." But the greater message here is that networking, the title of today's talk is How to Work a Room. Networking is much more than working a room. Networking in some ways is a state of mind. It's a state of being. It's a reality to the jobs that we do every day. So I'm not sure why you're networking. Maybe it's because you're looking to promote the organizations within which you work. Maybe you have a personal agenda that you're looking for sponsors, partners, allies for. Maybe you're networking for your own professional career. Whatever the reason, networking should be incumbent in everything that you do. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I also started with the story because part of what I'm going to share with you today isn't just the best practices in networking. You have some good resources in your handout in terms of things that you can look to. But we're going to talk a little bit about best practices. We're going to talk a little bit about what we teach leaders about networking. What's really interesting is you might be saying to yourselves, I did a random poll of some friends. I was telling them on the weekend that I was doing this talk, and they all said to me they didn't think they were really good networkers. And what was amazing to me was that they were all at fairly senior levels in their organization. But what's really neat is that there's a recognition now across both not-for-profit and for-profit organizations that we all need to become better networkers. We do a personal branding course as an example, and we recently did it at Pepsi for their high potential women leaders, and we actually spent a half a day with them talking about networking. So if you walked in here saying to yourself a little sheepishly, I need to become better at networking, don't worry, everybody needs to become better at networking. So what we're going to talk about today are some best practices. What we're going to talk about today are some key learnings that we have. And I'm also going to talk to you through my personal lens, because I'm hoping that when you hear some of the experiences that I've had, some of the things that I've learned along the way, that you'll be able to take those. And I'm going to take the opportunity to share with you 5 good ideas. But I'm hoping even if you take away one of those ideas and turn it into one really great idea for you, then we'll have been successful today. So that's sort of my goal. So when we start talking about the 5 good ideas, and you have them in front of you, we're going to start with the first one, which is the idea that you, first of all, in order to network, people think that networking is about walking to a room and throwing business cards at everybody. And I'm a member of a women's club downtown. Some of you may have been to. It's called Verity, and it's a fantastic place. But they do this once a month women's luncheon. And so I went for the first time, and I thought I need to network, and it was frightening. I walked into the room, and literally people were standing there throwing business cards at each other. And it was the strangest experience. We made no meaningful connection. I have no idea about any of those people. And sadly, I have to tell the truth, most of the business cards I pitched on my way out because I didn't even remember who gave them to me. And so the first thing that you want to do when you start thinking about the concept of networking is that you really have to know your brand. And when many of you understand the concept of branding. Branding isn't something that's new. In my past life, as I mentioned, I used to be a pharmaceutical marketer. I don't know if any of you recognize, good morning, good morning. Yeah, that wasn't me. But I wish it was, because maybe I'd still be in pharma. No, but that was a brilliant marketing campaign. But the thing that we learn quite quickly as brand managers is that people choose brands based on a series of attributes, whether they're real or not, is just the unfortunate reality of branding, but they choose you based on a series of attributes that they believe to be contained within your product. So as a marketer, you go and you spend all of this time figuring out what does your brand emulate? What can people hold true to? What can they believe in? Why do they choose you? The holidays just finished, and if some of you celebrate Christmas or do any sort of gift exchange over Christmas, you may have done what I did was, there's a few people who you know exactly what you're going to get for. And then there's a few people who you say, I have no idea, and then it's December 24th, and you say, oh, now I've really got to pull it together. And I went shopping the week before Christmas with a really good friend of mine, and he had a half an hour, and we met at the Eaton Center 3 days before Christmas. And he said, I've got to buy something for my sister, my girlfriend, and my girlfriend's sister. And we looked at the lines, and I said, I don't know how we're going to do this in a half an hour. And then we both looked at each other, and we said, let's go to Lululemon. And if anyone's ever bought from Lululemon, and I know there's some of the women at least around the room are giving me a smile, one of the things that you know with Lululemon is you can count on the brand. You can count on the fact that most women will enjoy something from there, that it's a product that you can count on, and all of those types of things. Well, the same holds true for the concept of a personal brand. People choose you because of some attribute that they believe to be true to you. And think about it. When you do things every day, perhaps you choose a dry cleaner or a hairstylist or a personal trainer or whatever it is, the different people that you interact with every day, you choose them because of some characteristic that you believe to be unique and true to their form. And that's one thing that we can do as effective networkers is decide what is it that's unique about us that's really true to our form. What is it that we have that maybe nobody else has? So what you quickly realize, it goes beyond your title. And I looked at the array of people who are here, and so if you're like me and you're an entrepreneur and you run Lisa Matam Consulting, that means nothing to anybody. So saying, hi, I'm Lisa Matam, I'm the managing principal of the Matam Group, really goes flat. It has no meaning. And maybe if you say, hi, I'm the coordinator at Eva's Initiatives, or I work at the Y, or I work at Toronto Housing, that sort of is a little bit more compelling because people have a degree of understanding of what you're saying. But you can take it much, much further when you start talking about what did I do that's truly unique, and what have I done that has impact. So if I said to you, hi, nice to meet you, I'm Lisa Matam, I'm the managing principal of the Matam Group. Our firm has had the opportunity over the last 3 years to create the diversity strategy and business case for Union Gas, and now we roll out all of their learning and development programs in diversity and leadership. Doesn't that sound so much better? And I mean, you have to choose the forum to say that. If I said that to somebody on the subway, they'd say, you've got, calm yourself down. So you have to choose the right forum to be able to say that. But you've really got to identify what that branding is. What is it that makes you truly unique? Have any of you ever seen the movie Bridget Jones' Diary? Yeah? Do you remember the scene when Renee Zellweger goes and she's practicing in her mind how to introduce people? And so she says, this is Tina Eden, she works at the Maytree Foundation, and this is, Joe Blow, this is where he works. And she tries to find something interesting to say about them. If Bridget Jones was introducing you, what would she say about you? And that's what it is that you want to figure out. If you only had 30 seconds to communicate that message, because sometimes you only have 30 seconds, what would that branding message be about? And that really takes me to my second key point, or my second good idea, which is once you've identified what your brand is, you really have to take the time to know what the message is associated to that brand. So what is it that you have to say? And what is it that you really want from networking? And how do you define that in a message? So I want to tell you another personal story. I had the absolute delight and honor to be valedictorian of my business school class when I finished. And so at convocation, I go and I deliver my valedictory speech, blah, blah, blah. And then following me is a gentleman named Ron Foxcroft. I don't know if that name is familiar to anyone. You may know him because he's the founder and CEO of Fluke Transport. So if you ever see a truck on the road and it says, if it's on time, it's a fluke, he owns, he owns that corporation. What you may also know him for is the Fox 40 whistle. So if anyone's ever had a Fox 40 whistle. So the Fox 40 whistle is a whistle it's a P-less whistle, which is what makes it unique. And it's used in sporting, it's used in the Olympics, and it's used in the NBA, and it's used in all sorts of sporting events. It's also, when I was in university, I became exposed to it because it's sometimes known as the date rape whistle, and it's given to women all over the place because it's a P-less whistle. So Ron Foxcroft came on after me, and he won the honorary doctorate for his work in business. And so he goes and he delivers his address. And as we're coming off the stage, he turns to me and he hands me his business card and he says, I just thought you were fabulous. You need to keep in touch with me. And I was thrilled. Up until this point, I born and raised in Scarborough. Most influential person I knew was my dad. All of a sudden, here's someone, this titan in business, is saying to me, I want you to keep in touch with me. So I do what every good networker does, right? I go home, I write him a note, I send it to him, and I say, it's so great to meet you. I can't wait to meet you again. And he sends me a Fox 40 whistle in the mail. And then I didn't know what to do. I kept the Fox 40 whistle, and I carried it around, and I thought, the sort of divine person in me said, this will be a reminder of one of my accomplishments. But I said, I no longer have this connection with Ron Foxcroft because this is the end of our conversation. And I even pathetically wrote him another email and said, thank you so much for the whistle, which he never responded to. And I don't blame him in any way because I had no message for him. I had no intent for why I wanted to connect with him. I had nothing that I wanted to say to him. I had no compelling reason to draw him to me. And now fast forward in time, 8 or 9 years later, I start this management consulting firm. I decide that one of the things I want to do is profile different leaders from across industries, sectors, all of these different things, and get a sense of what their leadership style is and profile that in my newsletter. So I write him an email and I say, I don't know if you remember me, and we met years ago at convocation. I spoke, you sent me a whistle. I was wondering if there's any way I could interview you for this leadership profile that I'm doing. And he wrote me back probably within an hour. He set up the time, He was so generous with his time. He let me interview him. He sent me so much information about him. He reviewed the article before it went in, and he actually sent it to a number of his colleagues to say, you know, look at one of these up-and-comers and see what she's doing. So you see quite quickly what the difference is. When you're networking with people, not only do you have to identify your brand and what it is that truly is unique, but what is your message to the people that you're going to be communicating to? And it could be very different, right? Sometimes I think of networking can have, you know, 2 or 3 real functionalities. There's sort of the idea, I've heard a gentleman call it net giving, as if you meet someone and you think you have something to give to them. That's one reason to connect with them, right? I met you at the Maytree lunch and you said that you were really struggling with how to impact policy, and I have a really good book that I want to send you. So that's one reason to connect with someone. There's the second reason, if you know that you know, and you feel comfortable and you feel you've created enough of a relationship where you want to be able to ask for something. So that would be the second intent to create your message around. And then there's the third one, which is the one that most of us sort of gravitate towards when we think of networking, which is just, I want to keep you within my network. Right? But what does that really mean? And so when you start sending a message out to someone, you know, it might be something as simple as, it was really great meeting you today. I'd love to get together for a coffee maybe once every 6 months and share ideas about some of the different things that you're doing and I'm doing and how we might be able to help each other in the different types of work that we do. Now all of a sudden there's some intent. There's a reason for me to connect with you. There's a reason for that person on the other end to say, hey, you know, you have this really unique thing that you're doing because you've shared your brand, and now you've shared your message, which is you want to keep me within your network, which is great. And so those two things become inherently important. There's one other thing that I want to tell you when it starts to becoming about your message is be as true to form as possible, but you know, don't hesitate to shine in your message. One of my very, very best friends is this unbelievable woman. She's an accountant, and to be honest, I really don't know what accountants do. I know they count things and stuff like that. But she's an accountant, and she had these amazing roles, you know, vice president here and senior management consulting here, and she had all these great roles, and she decided around the same time that I did to go out and create her own practice in risk. Again, I don't really know what that means. But I know that it's very impressive, and I know that a lot of organizations go to her. But what we started doing, because we both were in this practice, and one night we went out for drinks with a bunch of people who we hadn't seen in a long time, and they would ask her what she was doing. And every time, and you'll have to excuse me because I'm holding the microphone, but every time she would answer, and she would take her fingers and she would go, I run this small firm. And she would always put her fingers together, and she would say, it's just this little firm. It's just me. It's just me, and I don't even have an office. I get in my condo downtown. And she would go on and she would self-deprecate for the rest of the message around how she started this firm. And so we were walking home one night, and I said, why would you ever do that? First of all, nobody needs to know that it's just you. And in some ways, that's even amazing. You might be able to say, it's just me, but I'm so busy right now with work, which was the reality for her, that I'm looking to expand. You know, there's so many messages inherent in that. And so when you think about the work that you're doing, and I was amazed, and I was telling Tina when I came here, you know, the type of people who come to these sessions, you're doing amazing things in our community. Don't hesitate in any way, shape, or form to communicate that in your message. To communicate the work that you're doing, the work that your organization is doing, and why it should compel whoever it is that's the listener to really engage with you. So that's my second good idea. So you've got to know your brand, you've got to know your message, and now we're moving to our third good idea, which is sort of my more pragmatic idea. And this is the one, if you're taking notes right now, you're going to sit and say to yourself, this is the one I don't want to do, because it doesn't sound as fun as the others. But this is about really developing your map. And all of us think, you know, I don't know, I'm assuming most people are on Facebook? Yeah? Maybe, yes. We actually watched The Social Network before the holidays, and my husband, for some reason, found it, I don't know, disturbing that he, was part of this social convention, that he signed off of Facebook when we came home. But what I laugh at is that he got a virus on his computer the next day, and so I sincerely believe Mark Zuckerberg sent it to him to get him back. But you know, many of us think that because we're on Facebook and because we have 500 friends on Facebook, or because we're on LinkedIn and we have 1,000 people on LinkedIn, that we have this great, unbelievable network, that we have all of these people that we can call on. When I first started my practice, that same friend who I went Christmas shopping with, I actually asked him for some help, and he said, I'm not going to help you with your business until you sign up for Facebook, because you're going to connect with all these people that you wouldn't. And he was right. I connected with people who I went to grade 2 with. I connected with all these people who, I hadn't seen since they were in my ballet class, but as if I was going to write them an email and say, I haven't seen you since ballet when I was 12 years old. What do you do for a living, and do you need my services? And so we need to be able to take ourselves and look at social media for what it is, which is an excellent tool, but we really need to look at our network a bit more pragmatically. So here's your homework from today. You're going to go home and you're going to take a blank sheet of paper and you're going to put your name in the middle of a circle. And then what you're going to do is you're going to create branches extending from that. And that's when you can put anybody you want on those branches. You can put your colleagues, you can put your family, you can put your dentist, you can put anyone that you want. But what I want you to do is put anyone who you genuinely feel that you have a meaningful connection, and that's the key. That you have a meaningful connection with, that you could talk to about whether it's your career, your organization, your extracurricular activities, all of those things. And then what I want you to do is when you look at that, I first want you to see how big that is. And then what you can do, and as long as you have a sense of it, I want you to look at those individuals and I want you to start making branches out of them. So if you say, you know what, I've got this great friend, he's a lawyer, he finished law school at Osgood this year. I also know he has a number of lawyer friends, and here are the ones that I know of. I don't know them well, but here are the people branching out of them. And so what you are starting to do is create an actual map of your network. And here's what you're going to find when you start looking at that network map. I want you to first look at it and say, how big is it? Because that's actually going to be the true sense of what your network looks like. Because if you don't have a meaningful relationship with someone, remember, they can't make the list. So it can't just be someone who you had a 5-minute conversation with and you added on Facebook. It can't just be someone from abroad who you all shared a room together in a hostel one day. Those people don't fall into your network unless you had a meaningful connection that you could talk to them about something with. And so you're going to look at that network, and the first question is, of course, how big is it? The second question is going to be, how interconnected is it? So that means when you start creating all these little lines, do they know each other? And if so, create a line. So what you might find, and what you're looking for is, if your network is so interconnected that everybody knows each other, it's almost like it could be a straight line, right? It's almost like, if I create a network line to Tina, and then I create a network line to Katerina, and then I create a network line to everybody else who I have the fortune of knowing at Maytree, really, I could just know Tina, and she could introduce me to all of those people. So it's not to suggest that those people aren't valuable, but because they're so interconnected, it's giving me access to the same pool, all in all in all. And then what I want you to look at is, what does the diversity look like? And you can define diversity in very many ways, right? So there's sort of the traditional way that people tend to look at it, which is multicultural diversity. And what you might find, I did this exercise with a good friend of mine who's also South Asian, and what he found was majority of his network is South Asian. So in some ways that's kind of natural. We all gravitate sometimes to our cultural communities, but one of the things I want you to do is see, can you go beyond that? But I also want you to look at the diversity of sectors. I want you to look at the diversity of roles. I want you to look at the diversity of levels within an organization and say, do you have all of those things represented in your network map? Because that's going to be the key. That's going to be the thing that tells you, where do I have some gaps and where do I need to close those gaps? Or, by the way, I forgot that I knew that person and I could connect with them on this. And this is also going to be the thing, when you're sitting and you're saying, oh, who can I go to about this? You just quickly look at your network map and then you go and you go. And LinkedIn, so we're to talk about social media for a second, LinkedIn is a great place to start. So I don't know how many of you are on LinkedIn. It is a fabulous tool. What's great about LinkedIn is it shows you who you're connected to, it shows you who they're connected to, which is great, and it'll also give you a sense of what they do and what they're capable of, and it might be a great way for you to get started. But what I don't want you to do is use LinkedIn as sort of a crutch. So there's going to be people who aren't on LinkedIn who you need to be connected to. And there's going to be some people on LinkedIn, I looked at my LinkedIn last night, who I'm connected to, who I still wouldn't feel comfortable calling and maybe talking to them about my business. And so that doesn't mean that they aren't great people. That doesn't mean that I don't enjoy being connected to them on LinkedIn. But it does mean when it comes to some of those meaningful connections, I haven't quite progressed there. And so that's the question that you want to do. So we've got 1, 2, 3 good ideas. And now we're going to move to the 4th good idea, which is about being consistent. And I have to tell you, this is the one that I personally struggle with the most. And Tina mentioned that I'm a relatively new mom. I have a 1-year-old. And for those of you who are entrepreneurs, or you might, if you have young children, you know that we don't get maternity leave. And so I was quite quickly back to work when I had her. Sadly, I was on my BlackBerry in the hospital. But The reality of my life is that I quite quickly went back to work. And so not full time, but I was doing work intermittently. And if any of you have had children, or you have friends who have children, or family who has children, what everyone told me, but I had no idea how hard it would impact me, was the sleep deprivation, right? I could probably fall asleep right now. If you let me for a minute be quiet, I could probably fall asleep right now. I didn't take the subway because I was worried I'd fall asleep on the way down here. I really suffer from sleep deprivation, and just as a random aside story, because now my baby decides that she wants to sleep sitting up, so I go in every hour and put her back on her back, then she sits back up. So this is our new sort of thing. But what I struggled with when I first had her was trying to keep organized with everything with the business. And I used to be one of those people that if you got an email from me, you would get a reply within 24 hours. Always. You would always get a reply within 24 hours. Even if I needed to do something before I could answer your question, you would get a reply that said, I need to look into that. We'll get back to you by Friday. And you'd always be able to count on me. And then I had the baby. I would be nursing and typing on the computer at the same time. And so I really, really wanted to be really good with my client work. And so I was able to keep up the consistency with my client work, but where I struggled was keeping up with the consistency with my networking. And so Katerina probably can relate to this really well, because there are times where she's probably written me emails about this talk and thought, why hasn't she written me back? It's because one of the things I struggled with was that consistency. But consistency is so important in everything that you do, and it's a key leadership quality, but it's so important in networking. When people choose you, they want to choose you time and time again, and they want to be able to rely on you. They want to be able to know that no matter how many times I call Daniela, or how many times I call Malini, or how many times I call Keisha, I will always get a response. And it isn't just about responses, it's about following up. It's about when you say that you're going to follow up with someone, that you're actually going to do that. It's about when you say that you're about to undertake something, that you're actually going to do that. When you say I'm going to walk away and do some research, and I'm going to tell you about that book, I will actually get back to you and tell you about that book. Because that's what makes people want to keep you in their network, is because they can believe in you. They have something that they can tangibly go to. A good friend of mine who I grew up with, we're family friends, and he's a partner at a law firm downtown, is 100 times more busy than I will ever be. He's phenomenally busy. He does tons of work with the government. He's on the Pan Am Games. He helped get the UFC to Ontario. He's done all these really neat things. But no matter what time of day I contact him, he will always get back to me. I've gotten BlackBerry messages back that say, Lisa, I'm in Buenos Aires. We'll get back to you when I'm back in Canada. Lisa, I'm here. And I think it's amazing. I think it must be crazy to be married to him. But what I do think is that consistency is what makes me go to him time and time and time again as my lawyer, but also makes me recommend him to other people. And that's kind of the key in networking, right? Because part of networking, and we used the number before, 70% of new business and 60% of new jobs are attained through some sort of networking. The stat that you didn't hear is most of those things don't come from your immediate network. They come from the next layer up in your network map. So that's why the network map becomes important. As it might not be the person that you immediately know who's going to help you out, but it's going to be someone that they know. And in order for me to refer you, or if you think about all the referrals or introductions that you've ever made, you're going to refer the people who you feel confident in, that you know you can rely on, that you know you can trust, that you know will do everything that you need them to do. And so if there's nothing that you take away from this message today, is to be consistent. And it was a good reminder to me, because when I was preparing for this talk, it was actually the preparation that made me say, I've fallen a bit off the mark. I used to be incredibly organized. I used to have these notes that I would keep in my desk, and at the end of a busy work week, I would say, who do I want to reach out to? And I would handwrite notes to people if they impacted me during the week, if I had a special connection with them, if I just really wanted to reach out to them because I hadn't seen them in a long time. Ask me where my notes are right now. Right now they're spread all along the floor in the home office in my house. And so it's really easy to fall off the mark. And if you have, it's okay. We all go through personal things. For me, it happened to be parenting. For you, it might be the, expansion of your organization. It might be some project that you're working on. We do sometimes fall off, and people hopefully will forgive us for that. But when you can really commit yourself to consistency, you will find, one, you do better, but people will want to network with you. They'll want to include you in their network. They'll want to keep you in their network, and they're going to want to refer you onto their network. And I really, really ask you to think about that. When you leave here today, think about, what can I do to be more of a consistent person? So we've got 4 good ideas, and we're going to move to number 5, and then I want to get a sense of what your ideas are. But the next one is really about embracing the unexpected. Most of us think that networking is about coming to a session like this, which is a great opportunity to network, but they think that networking is just about coming to sessions like this. It's about, okay, I've done my one networking thing for the month, and I encourage you to do these things all of the time. And what I will challenge you on a day like today, but on most days when you're going to networking events, is you don't need to work the whole room. If you can walk away with 3 business cards, just 3, from an event like this, you are that much further. And so all you need to do is reach out to those 3 people, know your brand, know your message, and start involving them in your network. But networking goes beyond this, and as I mentioned when we first got started, it's a bit of a state of mind. And so part of networking is about embracing the unexpected. A year and a half ago, I was on a flight back from Houston, and I'm one of those people who doesn't talk on planes. And it's not because I'm not friendly. Truthfully, it's because I'm generally nauseated. And so I don't want to talk because I just want to focus myself to make it through the flight. And I'm like that in cars. I'm like that in really any moving vehicle. And so if you ever see me on a plane, please don't ever think that I'm being impolite. It's just that I'm just trying to be healthy. And so I was sitting on this plane, and I get onto, it's a flight back from Houston. It was one of those flights where you have 2 rows, and so, and there's like 2 people beside each other everywhere. And so I'm sitting beside this guy, and he's chatting with the 2 people behind him. So clearly they all work together, and they're chatting and they're chatting. And in my head, I can sort of feel my stomach going, and I say, okay, I've got to just stay focused. And it's funny, my husband always says, like, whenever he talks to me on a flight, I'm always like, get your steamy breath away from me. And that's all I could think about this guy. And so I put on my headphones, and then he starts talking to me, and I think, okay, talk to him, because I love talking to people. It's just that I'm in a plane and I'm going to be sick. And so we start talking to each other, and he ended up being so friendly and so nice, and we had this great conversation, and he recommended a TV show that we both watched at the same time. We shared my snack. We did all these interesting things. But what was interesting about the conversation is he turned out to be a former Deloitte consultant. We ended up knowing a number of people in common. He added me on Facebook, added me in LinkedIn. But what was really neat was he followed up with me and invites me consistently to these monthly network meetings that he has with people who work in consulting across Toronto. And so it's been an opportunity for me to meet all of these people who I would have never met. Now, does that mean that when I'm going to get on a plane, I'm always going to talk to the person beside me? To be honest, no. But what it does mean is I'm completely open to the fact that my network can expand in any way, shape, or form. It could be at an event like this where you think of it as a networking event, but it could be at a wedding. It could be at a social event. It could be on the subway on the way home. It could be anywhere. And so when you start to think about how you can truly become a great networker, how you can really involve ourselves, and we know we live in a time where it's like playing 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? We're all somehow connected to each other. So it's not hard for us to meet neat people all the time. So be open to the fact that your network is going to expand in some unconventional ways. That maybe you're going to be walking down the street and you're going to find yourself in your sweats, coming home from the gym. Or maybe you're going to be walking through the grocery store and talk to somebody about whether or not this cantaloupe is ripe and find out that they might be the neatest person for you to connect to. Don't close the door to the connection based on where you are. Open yourself to the connection based on who they are.